Hello, my name is Edgar De Anda with Benibra Pest Control in Westlaco, Texas, and I'm listening to the world's #1 pest control training podcast, the Pest Geek Podcast with Frank Hernandez.
25B essential oil sugar baits to control mosquitoes? Sounds like science fiction to me.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every day discussing all things pest. Today we're going to be talking about attractant sugar baits to control mosquitoes and other flies. And this seems like I fell off my rocker, but let me tell you guys, this is true. Attractant sugar baits to control mosquitoes, known as ATSBs, are actually on the market. And you can actually control mosquitoes, I think, better in some varieties than you can with synthetic sprays. This is going to shock a lot of people that I come out and say this, but it's true. Hey, join the society, PestGeekPodcast.com, Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook, and the Pest Geek Podcast Facebook page, and the YouTube channel. Join us. Join us in the conversation. Let's have a discussion about what's happening on the podcast. How can we make this better for other people? And tell me what I missed. Be glad to hear from you. But yes, we're going to be talking about what are known as ATSBs. They've been tested extensively in parts of the Mediterranean, like in Israel, with certain sugars and certain things. And we all know that mosquitoes and certain insects are attracted to sugars. And mosquitoes are attracted to the glucose in our blood, and therefore that's what they're really seeking out. So the use of what is known as an ATSB is not science fiction. The evolution of attracting toxic sugar baits, barrier for control of vector and nuisance mosquitoes, and its effects on non-target organisms in subtropical environments in Florida, of all places. I thought Florida was the mosquito capital of the world. As a matter of fact, our state bird needs to be changed to the mosquito. But they did a test, and here's what they found. I'm going to give you an abstract from these studies. I got about 10 studies in here, I think, at least 6 to 8. I had a couple of more, but I'm saving those for another podcast. But here is the efficacy, the abstract from this. It says the efficacy of attractive toxic sugar baits, known as ATSB, with the active ingredient eugenol. What? Eugenol? Isn't that like an essential 25B oil that is supposed to be repellent? Yep. An Environmental Protection Agency exempt compound was evaluated against vector and nuisance mosquitoes in both laboratory and field studies. In the laboratory, eugenol combined in attractive sugar bait, an ASB solution, provided high level of mortality for Aedes aegypti, Culex, Quinkfascistius. Yes, good luck me pronouncing that. And Culex anaphyles. They did the studies. The field studies demonstrated significant control, 70% reduction for Aedes atlanticus, Aedes infirmitus, Culex nigripalpus, and 50% reductions of Anaphyles crucians. And then Culeceta melanura and Culex erraticus. 3 weeks post ATSB applications. 3 weeks after, 50 to 70% reduction. Furthermore, non-target feeding of 6 insects, Hemiptera, Lepidoptera, Coleoptera, Diptera, Hemiptera, and Orthoptera were evaluated in the field after application of a dyed ASB of flowering and non-flowering vegetation. ASB feeding staining was determined by dissecting the gut and searching for food dye with a dissecting microscope. The potential impact of ATSB on non-targets applied on a green and non-flowering vegetation was low. On all target groups, only 0.9% were affected. However, application of the ASB to flowering vegetative results significant staining of non-target insect orders. So the flowering is getting it in the nectar, where that nectar is, where they pull it out of, or they pollinate, is where you probably don't want to do it. But yes, they showed that we can get significant reduction with eugenol. What I found is that in a lot of studies, a 1% eugenol solution is not repellent to certain insects, including mosquitoes. So that was one study, and I got a link to that. Check out that whole study, different methods for using attractive sugar baits for the control of sandflies. In the previous study, here's the abstract from it. We have previously shown that fermented ripe fruit is a strong attractant for several mosquito species, and when mixed with oral insecticide, these attractive toxic baits, known as ATSB, were highly effective for local mosquito control. In the present study, we compared the effects of ATSB presented in different ways in isolated populations of, and I'm not even going to attempt that. You read the article. Experiment carried out in arid habitat of the Jordan Valley in Israel, where the effectiveness of 3 methods were compared. ATSB sprayed on patches of vegetation, net fence coated with ATSB, and bait stations soaked with ATSB spraying. ATSB reduced the population to about 5% of the control area population. Barrier ATSB coated fences were similar, affected district population to about 12%, and concurrent catch in the control site. The effect of ATSB presented in bait station was much smaller compared to the control, only caused a population reduction of 40%. Okay, so part of it, an IPM method to control sandflies. A 40% reduction, geez, without having to spray a chemical. That's what's exciting about this. Bait solutions were prepared and described for control sites. It consisted of 95% juice of ripe nectarines, 5% wine, 10% with brown sugar, and then 0.05% red food coloring, and a 10% mixture of slow-release substance preservatives. The solution ripened for 48 hours, were covered buckets, outdoors in the sun. Daily temperatures reach about 30 degrees Celsius. Then a boric acid of 1% was added, with a 0.04% of the spinosa were added to the oral toxins to the solution and used in experimental sites. Hey, so they had a pretty good record. Now, the efficacy of attracting toxic sugar baits against Aedes albopictus with garlic oil encapsulated in beta xylodextrin as an active ingredient. Wait a minute, garlic oil? Isn't there a product on the market made of garlic juice that's supposed to repel mosquitoes? Yes, that's right, garlic oil. Microencapsulated with an active ingredient against Aedes albopictus in suburban, I think it's Haifa, Israel. Listen to this, 2 3-acre gardens with high number of Aedes albopictus. I'm going to get this right by the time this podcast ends. Were selected for perimeter spray treatment with ATSB and ASB bait containing no active ingredient. Baits were colored with food dye, verifying feeding of the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes population was monitored by human landing catches, sweep net catches in surrounding vegetation. Experiments lasted 44 days. Treatment occurred on the 13th day. The mosquito population collapsed about 4 days after treatment and continued to drop steadily for 27 days until the end of the study. At the experimental site, the average pretreatment landing rate was 17.2 per 5 minutes. And 2 days post-treatment, the landing dropped to 11.4 and continued to drop an average of 2.6 during the following 26 days. During the same period, control population was stable. Few sugar-fed Sugar-fed females, 8 to 10% approached a human bait, and then anthrol tests were stellarly small, accounting for sugar where their crop gut. So, and then here it goes. Around 60 to 70% of males caught near the human bait were sugar positive, which may indicate that the males were feeding on the sugar. We're feeding on the sugar. All right, now, so there it shows that, hey, they saw a decline steadily throughout the entire study. So it can work. Let's see here. The implication of operational control of adult mosquito population in cisterns wells in St. Augustine, Florida, using attractive sugar. There's a study on that. That's pretty interesting. A lot of these studies are being done in Florida. I wonder why. I would like to see the results because I've asked this and I've challenged everybody because I've used it, and I challenged everybody to prove to me that an application of an IGR with a microencapsulated pyrethroid, which claims by the manufacturer to control mosquitoes up to 90 days, I can't get more than 30 days control from that. In the summer, 21 days. Yet they claim you can get 90 days. Now, what people fail to understand is that none of those tests were done in Florida. None of those tests were done where we have hundreds of plants around the property that hold water. Those tests weren't done in places where you have literally 50 feet from the house on the street, probably 20 to 50 feet. There are storm drains filled with water where mosquitoes are breeding, and you can't treat them because those belong to county property. All of this has to be taken in consideration when you're designing a mosquito control program. Simply spraying a pyrethroid with an IGR is not going to get you automatic control. Now, the control of Aedes albopictus with attractive sugar bait, ATSB, potential impact on our organisms in Florida. I suggest you read that because I don't know where people have mosquitoes almost all year round, but we got them in Florida. Now, the indoor use of attractive sugar bait ATSB to effectively control malaria vectors in Mali, West Africa. They did a study where they went in 58 bedrooms and they used for 50 days a field study containing a 1% boric acid, sugar bait, and boric acid. The results, here's what happened. 90% of females and 93% of males in male population of, Gambay at the experimental village. Can you imagine that? 90 to 93% reduction by using a bait versus spraying those houses and fogging them with using a ULV, which is normally what they do, a hot fog. A 3-point-fold increase in proportion of females that had undergone 4 or more genotropic cycles was recorded at the experimental village compared to a 1.2 increase in the control village. 90 to 93% control. Conclusion in field studies, ATSB stations, situated indoor landings, substantial reduction. So imagine you got mosquitoes in your house. You put this little mosquito ATSB in the rooms, and the mosquitoes by morning should be gone. They should be dead. Indoor application of attractive toxic sugar baits in combination, listen, with mosquito nets to control of pyrethroid-resistant mosquitoes. Check out that study. Evolution of boric acid sugar baits against Aedes albopictus in tropical environments. And the attractive sugar bait mix. Wait. Pyroproxyfen. Pyroproxyfen. Got it. There you go. We use this, by the way, if you use Tico. Sprayed on plants against adult larval Aedes albopictus mosquitoes. Here we go. Ready? Abstract. The effect of spraying a mixture of insect growth regulator with 1% boric acid bait or eugenol sugar bait on croton petra plants was evaluated against container inhibiting mosquitoes. Treatments were applied to plants and evaluated against the adult larval in a laboratory through contact wash-off experiment. Here's the numbers. Nearly resulted in 60 to 100% mortality of laboratory reared adult mosquitoes collected from the plant wash experiment result 80 to 90% emergence in habitation of exposed to third and fourth instar larvae compared to the untreated control. This is phenomenal, guys. This stuff changes everything. Why is there no push to create this in the mass market and get this out there when we know that it's working? That makes you think. It makes you scratch your head, doesn't it? Well, all the studies are there, guys, for you to enjoy. I have posted links to every single one of them. Go out and feed to your heart's content on these studies, and I will see you again next time, which means tomorrow. Folks, have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.